Hey, it's Rob. Welcome to Axel's Garage. What am I doing? Well, I'm using a razor blade to clean my windshield. We'll get to that later. This is our 2-year update owning this 2023 Ford Maverick hybrid. We call our Ellen. Long story. But let me finish scraping the windshield and I'll give you the 2-year update. Well, we've had this 23 Maverick for 2 years. We've got 46,000 miles on it, and we've done nothing to it except rotate the tires, every oil change. I think we rotated them at 5,000 and then did it the first oil change, and then every oil change thereafter we rotated the tires. We've added window washer fluid. That's it. At just past the end of the first year, about 25,000 miles, we changed the cabin air filter and the engine air filter, and I'll link that video right up here so you can get a step-by-step on how to do the cabin air and the engine air. So now that we're at anniversary number 2, due for a state inspection next week, we'll be getting that done, and we're going to do the engine air filter today and the cabin air filter again. I think I'm just going to do them every year at the rate that we're putting miles on it. Most of the miles have been traveling from New York down to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee where my kids are. So a lot of trips like that. So it's a lot of highway miles. The windshield, you saw me scraping the windshield with a razor blade. I've never had a car that bugs get stuck to the windshield to the point where you can clean them and it looks clean. And then if you start driving, especially at night with a little bit of rain, you could see the speckles, and it almost looked like they're tiny little chips in the windshield. And when you use the windshield wipers to either wash the windows or to just clear a mist, just a mist, like when you do it once, you can hear, when the windshield wipers go across, you could hear the noise. So we've washed it over and over again and just can't seem to get it clean. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to scrape it. We do have a stone chip in the window, so I said, well, if I scrape it and screw it up by scraping it, which I didn't think I would, I'm not really digging, I'm just lightly guiding it across, lubing it with window washer solvent, and you can hear the razor blade as it goes across. It'll start hitting a couple of, and it's just bug guts that are stuck, but it's clear. Weird. But I got them all off, and now I got a smooth windshield again. It was real easy. It took me 5 minutes for each side. Just soaked the windshield really good and just ran the razor blade, and you could hear the razor blade hitting them. And then when you go back over it again, it's silent, the razor blade going, and you know you got them all. And I did the whole windshield, cleaned off the windshield wipers, which are actually pretty awesome. 2 years, a lot of miles, a lot of rain, a lot of use. Car sits outside all the time in the sun, so it's getting, you know, beat up by the UV rays, and the factory windshield wipers are still perfect. So I think if I ever replace these, I'm going to replace them with factory wipers because these really did last. Better than any aftermarket wipers that I've had. They usually last, what, a year or so, and then the sun dries them out. Happy with that. Haven't had any really glitchy stuff. The only glitchy stuff I did have was at the dealer, and I'll tell you that story while I get the cabin air filter. So one of these is supposed to be the cabin air and one's the engine air. I got them on the Amazons. I will link it in the description below. They're aftermarket brand filters. I think the last time we used a Ram in the engine air, and I forget the brand in the cabin air. It might have been an aftermarket in the cabin air. They're not real readily available yet for these cars in brand names. Or I might have used a Motorcraft even. I might have used a Motorcraft engine air, and the cabin air might have been, I don't think it was a Fram. I don't think Fram. Either way, use whatever filter you want. You know, we're changing them once a year at the rate we're going through them. So I really don't think, you know, brand is going to be all that important. If they had, like in a lot of other cars, they have the activated charcoal, the scented ones. This one actually gives the look of the activated charcoal type filter. Color wise, a premium. You can see it's got like that darkness in it in the white. I don't know if it is or it isn't. Gives you direction for airflow. That's important. I know that after the year on that first one, if you go back and where I clicked the link for the video, that first one was pretty dirty after a year, so I'm expecting this one to be just as dirty. And it smells like cold pizza. Every time I've done one of these, you always get that cold pizza smell. So the thing that sucks about doing these cabin air filters is you have to empty the glove compartment. And I'd love to blame all this on my wife, but I'll be honest. When you're doing road trips on a regular basis like we are, you do accumulate a lot of stuff in the glove compartment. Tourniquet, you know, it's just buff bag. You just do accumulate menus. So yeah, it sucks. EpiPen, my wife's got a peanut allergy. Another EpiPen. You do accumulate a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff you need. But doing the cabin air filter once a year is actually a nice way to clean out the shit that you don't need. You know, wheel lock, nail file, owner's manual, parking permit, books and stuff, knives, forks, sprays, keys, Clorox wipes, phone chargers. I don't even know what this is. Flonase allergy relief. I don't know why we have that. And a lot of dust in there. So, like I showed in the first video, you got to get the little latch off, and you squeeze a little pair of needle nose, and you get the I guess the catch, or I don't know, whatever you call it. And then you got your two tabs here, and that goes down. Now I believe if I get my leg out of the way, does it come all the way off? Yeah, probably does come all the way off, but look at that. You got stuff stuck up under there. And now I can access my cabin air filter. Not too horrible. Airflow is down. Not nearly as bad as the first time, but you can see there is a lot of decent particulate in there. Right? And yeah, it does not smell nearly as bad as the first one. But it does have that cold pizza smell. I just don't understand what that is. But there is a decent amount of particulate in it. Now I'll grab the new filter. New filter is marked with an airflow arrow down. The air does flow down. So whichever way your air flows, that's the big thing, because just don't assume that it's down, it's airflow down. So you got to look at your box and see the way it's set up. We know that this one airflow down because when we took the filter out, all the particulate was on top. Most of them are airflow down. but just like realize that. Oh, look at that. It does come right out, which is nice. Because then you could take, what, I brought it in with me. Oh, there it is. Dust it off. We did a real thorough cleaning of the interior last week, and it was the first thorough deep clean that we did since owning it. And wow, just from regular use, does everything get dusty and dirty. I mean, the car does see daily use, but it is definitely the trips that really make it dusty and dirty. That's it. Now I just gotta organize and put the stuff back. So there have been a couple of recalls, and this box is such a pain in the ass. There we go. There have been a couple of recalls, and most of them, all of them actually, have been software updates on the recalls. So this, you know, not horrible, but that's why you do preventive maintenance, is so that it doesn't get horrible. So, you know, you bring it in for the oil change and it's got an update or a safety recall, and the recall is really a computer update, which is fine. And they do the computer update while they do the safety recall. So they did that a couple times. And then the last time I went in for an oil change, now my first 4 oil changes were complimentary, let's call it. So we'll call it complimentary. When I bought the car, he goes, instead of getting the points for buying the car, the Ford points, he said, what we'll do is we'll exchange that for service. And I said, oh, all right, I'll exchange that for service. So the first 4 oil changes were complimentary. So I'd bring it in, they do the oil change, tire rotation. My local dealership calls it the works. I don't know if that's a nationwide term that Ford uses. They call it the works. Oil change, tire rotation, nice and simple. Usually gets done pretty quick. A lot of times I leave it, I did wait for it. We did some videos on it too. It's all in the Maverick playlist, which I'll link right here. So now, I had to go for an oil change. It was my 5th oil change. And remember, the oil changes on these don't go strictly by miles. It goes by when the car tells you it needs an oil change, because the engine doesn't run as much as you're driving the car because of the hybrid kind of deal. So it's not strictly by mileage. It goes by when the car tells you you need an oil change, you get an oil change. So bringing in the last time, now this time I had to pay for it. Now the works, I'll air quote it again, is an $89.99 deal at my local Ford dealer. So for the 90 bucks, all right, I'll go there instead of my local mechanic or doing it myself. It's a pain in the ass on these doing it yourself for 2 reasons. The jacking points, it's got jacking points, but you almost like, there's no place to jack it and then put the jack stand on the jacking point, because it's just a pain in the ass to lift the car up, unless you drive it up on ramps, which I don't like to use. I could jack it, you know, figure out a, you know, a little control arm or something to get the jack stand under the jacking point. Pain in the ass. Anyway, there's a whole big panel I don't want to call it a skid plate, but it's just a panel that's underneath that has to come down. I think it's 14 bolts. That comes down to access your oil filter and your oil drain. So for the $89, tire change, oil rotation, I thought it was a decent deal. So I bring it in, and I did have another recall. Now this recall was for the backup camera, that the backup camera had this propensity to freeze. So you'd be backing up and you would see a stationary picture, but you wouldn't realize it's a stationary picture, and then somebody could walk behind you and you could back into them because the picture that you were looking wasn't a frozen picture of one that was, say, clear. So that was the recall. And it, again, it's a software update, not any kind of parts change. So I go in for my oil change, $89.99 special, and it turns out that now that $89.99 special is like $109 plus tax or whatever it is. They raised the price. Wasn't happy about that. And then I asked him, I go, well, I think I have a recall due. And he goes, well, oh yeah, for the backup camera. He's on the computer and he sees recall backup camera, and it's coming up on my app as well. So he said, is your camera freezing? And I said, no. And he said, well, then you don't need to do the recall. I thought that was odd because the recall is part of a software update, which normally will update any other software stuff that the car needs. And on these newer cars especially, software runs everything. So they didn't do the software update. So then they send me a survey. They emailed me a survey afterwards, and they said, oh, you know, how'd you think about your service? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I was a little annoyed with the price. And I explained to them why. I said, for $115, I might as well just go bring it to my local guy. Why should I go to my Ford dealer? You guys are pricing yourself out of the market. So a couple days later, maybe a week or so, I get another email from Ford. Now, I don't think that it was coming directly from the dealership necessarily, but I get another email. And it said, has your dealer contacted you regarding your comments on your service that I did in the first email? And I said, nope, they haven't. And then it sends me to another survey. When I said no, it sends me to another survey, and it says, well, what could we do to make things better? I said, well, to be honest with you, I complained about the price again, and then I told them about the recall. It just didn't seem right. A week goes by and I get a phone call from my local Ford dealer wanting to do the recall. We'll come to your house and do the recall. And I said to the lady, I go, well, I had the car there for service, and I explained to her the situation. She goes, oh, well, maybe we didn't have the parts in there, and that's why they didn't do it. I says, no, it's a software update. There's no parts involved. And then she tried to make up another story why they didn't do it. So they send the guy to my house. Guy comes to my house. He says it's going to take about 45 minutes. I got to plug in, download, upload, reload, and you'll be good to go. 45 minutes later, I give him a bottle of water. I give him a tip. He's on his way, and I got my update. My recall is handled. Now, the only thing that was a little glitchy since we got it was the CarPlay. Using CarPlay, it's wired CarPlay, and we use the CarPlay all the time. And it was a little glitchy when you first plugged your phone into CarPlay and either tried to receive or make a phone call. The call would connect, but your voice wouldn't. So you couldn't hear what they were saying, they couldn't hear what you were saying. And then the second phone call, while you still had that same CarPlay connection, was fine, and it was fine after that. And then every once in a while it would freeze. The freezing didn't happen often at all. Maybe 4 times over the 2 years and 46,000 miles. However, the phone call thing would happen all the time. All the time, first phone call would be bad. So when we would call the kids from on the road when we were traveling to go see them, we'd hit them. As soon as the call connected, we'd disconnect and redial it, and it would be fine. And we just dealt with it that way. Since this last update for the rear camera, it probably did update other things, because now every time we plug that phone in, that first phone call works. So the software updates do more than just what the intended, it might say software update for this, but it's updating everything in your software package. And to me that was important, and it was pretty shitty that my service advisor advised me poorly. Like, do your job, do it right. If you don't know your job, ask somebody. Instead, he just made a decision on his own, because these service advisors, a lot of times, they're not car guys. They don't know anything about the new models. Like, they should know. They should have some kind of training. And that's just my Ford dealership gripe. These service advisors, service writers, whatever you want to call them, they should have some knowledge, some training about how these cars work, especially with new technology and newer cars that are packed chock full of a lot of electronics, computers, and technology. Do I like it? When it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it sucks. But that's my Ford gripe. Anyway, 2 years, 46,000 miles. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Still the same thing. I wish I would have gotten the upgraded, I forget what they call it, the cruise control, the better cruise control. Not the we have the standard cruise control, the adaptive cruise. The adaptive cruise. I wish I would have gotten the adaptive cruise. That's the only thing that I'm upset that I didn't get, is the adaptive cruise. Everything else, I'm very happy with it. We got a lot of miles on it. We continue to put miles on it. This thing, we got it cleaned up. I did the windows inside now. Just before, we scraped that windshield nice. I got new windshield washer fluid in it. All my fluids are good. Just checked that. New air filter, new cabin air filter. Steve-O's taking it to Chicago for the summer. And we're all set. We will need tires when he gets back from Chicago. So the tires they're still good. Still got plenty of meat on them. I'm not up to the safety indicators yet. But when he gets back, they'll be low enough where we'll want to get a set of tires before the winter. So in the fall, we'll shop around for some tires, and we'll see what we'll get on that. But so far, it's just really, it is small. It's roomy inside for 2 people. For 3 people, it's still okay. 4 people, it's a little tight, but okay. I wouldn't go on a 12-hour trip with 4 people. Bed-wise, it meets our needs. It's my wife and I traveling to see the kids. Yeah, we do load the crap out of it sometimes. Even put a rear cargo tray in it when we had to move some of the kids around to college and stuff. But really, does it meet our needs? Yeah, it's big enough for what we need. The bed is big enough for what we need on a regular basis, and I think it was a great choice, and the mileage is still phenomenal. Round town, we average we short tripping it when we're around town, so 37. Long city driving, longer trips, you're in the high 40s, and highway, you're anywhere from 37 to 42, depending on temperature. The warmer it is outside, the better it does on mileage. That's just the nature, I guess, of the batteries and the hybrid system. That's all I got. That's my 2-year update, 46,000 miles. We're happy. It's a 23 Maverick hybrid. And yeah, I'd buy another one if I had to. I really like it. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the quick video. And as always, thanks for watching.